As a business owner, we've really tried to find a corner of the industry, a niche if you will, by trying to answer one single question and be really good at answering that question, is how to get health and fitness to finally stick in people's lives. And while that may seem like a tall order, we actually think that we understand the solution very well. The first thing that we must do in order to get health and fitness to finally stick is to have the story of health right in our minds. In other words, we have to reframe the story of health so that we understand the true value of it. If you're having a hard time with healthy behaviors, then something isn't clear about health upstairs. There's something not potent enough that's driving your emotional behavior to do and make those better choices. So whether you're a politician or a marketer or you're in PR, we all know the power of controlling the narrative. Now, this isn't something that just needs to be done to us. This is how we're wired. This is something that we can do for ourselves. The limbic part of our brain is what is passionate and emotional and what drives our behaviors. Unfortunately, we're not very rational people, so we're much more driven by this primal mechanism. But we can use that to our benefit, and that's what we at Siva Fitness are really good at, reframing this story of health. So sometimes reframing the story of health is a hard conversation. A few of you may be a little squirmy in your chairs today. Like I said, I'm good at being the bad guy, but I promise you, ultimately, this is a story of empowerment and hope. And it's going to start off with me telling you a little bit about my own personal narrative. When I was 6 years old, my parents got divorced and I moved away from my dad, and my mom didn't make much money. She was a secretary. She made about $12,000 a year. So I was a latchkey kid because she couldn't afford daycare. Well, as being a kind of a scared kid going home by himself for a couple hours, I numbed my feelings with food. And really quickly, I started to gain weight as a child. Now I'm scared and anxious and very confused, and now I'm overweight, and I became a magnet for bullies. My mom thought she'd do me a favor and get me into sports to toughen me up, but that made things dramatically worse as my uniform never fit, and I struck out every time at bat. That is a true story in Little League. It isolated me a little bit further, and I just, early years were not very happy, but they got a little bit better in middle school and high school as I kind of got taller, and girls came into the picture, things were a little bit happier. But ultimately, those problems that I had as a child caught up with me in my early 20s, and I found myself at age 22, divorced after an 8-month practice marriage, I like to call it. I had filed for bankruptcy, I had dropped out of college, and I was about 75 pounds overweight. This was my rock bottom, and I decided that I never wanted to be there again. Well, the universe threw me a bone and sent me a very beautiful woman into my life who had her stuff together, and for 20 years we've been married. And I always called her my first health coach because she was the first person that I ever met who actually was making sense of life. She was training for the Boston Marathon. She had just purchased her first house. She always had a smile on her face, and I was just magnetized to her. She never tried to change me. I just watched her. So trying to fix myself, so to speak, I went and got some therapy, and that really helped, and I found a spiritual side of things, and that really helped as well. But it wasn't until about 15 years ago that the game truly changed, and I got out the phone book. You guys remember phone books? I got out the phone book and I called Three Rivers Martial Arts Academy here in Paducah, where Jason Hawkins is the owner, and he's a wonderful guy for those of you who know him. And at that point, everything started to get better. My yoga teacher once told me that wherever the body goes, the mind follows, and she was exactly right. Because as I started taking care of my physical health, my mental health started to move forward lock and step. And now my story of health is a lot different. Those people in the middle there, that's what motivates me. That's who I do it for. I wasn't just getting healthier, I was getting happier. And those were the people who were benefiting the most. A story that's too common now, and it happened, I was reminded of it starkly last month, as I was at a marching band competition watching my daughter compete. And I was up in the stands and I started to get a little overwhelmed and sad as I looked down at the field and saw a large amount of children struggling with obesity. They were having a hard time moving their equipment on and off the field. They were having a hard time walking and playing their instruments, and even the drum major was having a hard time climbing up on the podium. I looked in the stands, and the parents weren't faring much better as they struggled to walk up the bleachers. I saw them uncomfortably sitting and adjusting their clothes, and I empathized with both of these situations drastically. The kids on the field, I knew their pain. It's hard enough to be a teenager, let alone not being comfortable in your own skin. And the parents, I was frustrated for them because I'm sure they had a sense of hopelessness when they didn't know how to fix that problem for themselves, let alone watch their kids struggle with it. And as I drove home, I drove through the crowds of fast food restaurants, and I realized just how much our culture is creating an uphill battle to reclaim health. As we see more and more, these used to be treats. We used to eat this stuff once a week or something, and it was cool, you know, go to McDonald's for a Happy Meal. Now it's a daily occurrence, if not multiple times daily. And the problem is on a molecular level, our bodies can't digest this food. And it's a great commercial product. We have to keep it preserved, but unfortunately, our biological system is just not designed to take it in. So we're finding ourselves in this crisis of the type of nutrition that is readily available and affordable. On top of that, our sedentary lifestyle, the amount of time that we actually need to move is decreasing. Innovation makes our lives easier. So as we become office jockeys, we get to sit more, and sitting disease is causing musculoskeletal issues, as well as kinking the hoses and causing a cascade of other biochemical and stress-related diseases. Needless to say, this is just an uphill battle that is in front of our face, and we have to learn how to deal with it. Since 1975, our obesity rate has tripled. 7 out of 10 of us are overweight. 4 out of 10 of us are morbidly obese. And just to give you a little bit of some contrast, in Japan, only 7% of people are overweight. That's not obese, that's just overweight. This is costing us $150 billion a year. It is directly linked to our heart disease, diabetes, stroke, cancer, osteoarthritis, sleep apnea, and more. But what drives me and what motivates me, the hill I'm willing to die on, so to speak, is to get people to understand the real cost of physical health and how it intersects with our quality of life, especially in regards to our mental health. So I wanted to be able to draw this line and create a clearer distinction. So I asked myself, well, what do happy people have in common? And the first thing is, on a base level, happy people have a certain type of brain chemistry. They create the chemicals in their brain for happiness: dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. Second, happy people are not in chronic pain. I've never met somebody who is in chronic pain and generally has a great outlook on life, because most of their resources, mental, chemical, and physical, and financial, are used to cope with their symptoms. Happier people are resilient. They bounce back from life stressors a little bit more quickly, if not, fight them off completely. Happy people have enough energy in the gas tank to pursue the type of life that they want. Happy people also have a sense of accomplishment since they are able to produce and go for that type of life. With that sense of accomplishment, as you can imagine, confidence grows, and a contentment for the life that they are living increases as well. And notice that contentment is seen also as the lack of regret. People who are happy mark high on levels of self-respect. And finally, people who are happy have a clear sense of purpose moving forward in their lives. They know what makes them happy, and that is why they're happy. It just so happens that all of these things are the benefits of a healthy lifestyle as well. At first, brain chemistry. When you exercise, you literally create more dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine in your brain. If the body's having a hard time making it on its own, exercise is one of the most important things you can do to navigate that symptom. When done appropriately, exercise affects your muscle imbalances. It makes your joints stronger. It causes better posture. It makes you feel better. If you have a healthy diet, you have lower inflammation in your blood. Inflammation is where all disease breeds. Even depression has been linked to inflammation now, and your injuries feel worse. Everything starts and stops there. As far as resiliency is concerned, exercise literally is the best stress management tool we can find. Why is that? Because exercise is self-induced stress. You are putting yourself in a stressful situation, and if you breathe correctly and if you have proper mechanics, your nervous system will adapt positively, which will make you a more resilient person. As far as energy and vitality goes, when we have a good relationship with food, we treat food more as fuel instead of entertainment, which gives us longer and better energy sources throughout the day. On top of that, when you exercise, your body creates something called mitochondria. It creates more of it, and it's the battery of the cellular body, so to speak. When you make more mitochondria, it's like going from a 4-cylinder to a V6 or a V8, and that lasts all throughout your day. Also, when you're working out and you're making better choices, you have a sense of accomplishment, and who's not going to feel more confident living that kind of life? The life that you want, you're now content, you don't feel regret because you're not missing those workouts and you're not making poorer choices. And this is one's kind of hard to say sometimes, or at least sometimes it's hard to hear, but self-respect equals self-care. In our minds, we may feel that we have a high respect for ourselves, but if our behaviors don't match our thoughts, then we have to kind of check ourselves when it comes to that. Being in a deteriorative health cycle is not improving our station in life. And finally, having a health-centered life is by definition a sense of purpose and clarity. It creates more abundance in everything we want and in everything that's important to us. Navigating health isn't as confusing as you might think it is. We live in an information age, and we are surrounded by articles and information that contradicts us, and most of those articles that we decide to read are ones that confirm the way we want to view the world. I love orange juice, so to hear vitamin C is in orange juice, yeah, I'm going to buy that, right? Unfortunately, the type of information that most of us need is kind of hard to understand a lot of times. But what's really important, like I said before, is getting the story of health correct in our minds, and that is like cutting through butter with a hot knife when it comes to getting those behaviors to stick a little bit easier. First and foremost, when it comes to reframing your story of health, the thing you need to understand about yourself is before you were a Bob or a Betty or a banker or an American or a mother or a father, you are a biological machine. That means that you run on certain principles. You can treat your body like a jalopy, or you can treat it like a race car. Whatever you do, you're going to get out of it. And we just haven't looked at ourselves this way since we started school. Our physical education consisted of playing dodgeball. I love sports, but we don't understand proper body mechanics, and a lot of us have low back issues and knee issues that could have been completely remedied if we just understood how to walk up steps a little bit better and some of those everyday things that we just take for granted. No, that didn't come through. The other thing that we need to understand about health is we kind of look at it as a dirty word. Unfortunately, when we see the word health, we're usually sitting in the doctor's office feeling sick. There's a negative association, I think, that's happening with that word. And in front of us the whole time has been this perfect model with that word of human optimization. Every facet of your life, if we decided to make behaviors and make choices in regards to a health model, would improve everything. From a financial standpoint, if I have healthy finances, then I can afford to eat cleaner and go to a personal trainer. If my physical health improves, then my mental health improves, like we've just talked about. If I feel good about myself, I'm going to integrate more socially. My social health is then going to make my community better, which is going to improve the environmental health. And my environment, as that increases in quality, that is getting into spiritual health. Because as we know, being a part of a much bigger picture is the essence of spirituality. And this is how health intersects. You can't have an effect on one without having an effect on the other. Whichever way you decide to move the needle is critically important in all areas of our lives. And this health model is a model that I really, really would hope that our culture starts to find that even our tone, our national tone, has moved lock and step with our national health crisis. And I think that's important to recognize, because health is about adding things in our lives, not taking things away. We sit there and we look at a diet, right? What's the first thing you think about? I can't eat this anymore. I'm starting to lose things in my life that I lost. When in all seriousness, health is about making the most out of the things that you love, is having more energy. Energy economics is the central idea in health. We're removing the restrictive forces and we're developing the driving forces. If we took Gandhi at his word when he said health is our greatest wealth, we would all be exercising every day and we wouldn't think about it. It's a shame to work our lives for money and then give it all back to doctors prematurely before we need to. The other thing that I noticed, especially with clients and reframing their story of health, is that we're very goal-oriented people, and that's great. But the goal makes a destination. Health is not destinational, it's directional. It's something we do every day. At Siva Fitness, we have a core value, and it's called marathon mentality, that the only finish line is actually death. So every day we get up, we put one foot in front of the other. Health is not about having a perfect record, it's about having a winning record. It's about moving the needle in the right direction to improve your quality of life. Another thing it is health makes life active and not passive. Passive meaning I'm just waiting around to be entertained until I start to age as fast as I can. And active is not necessarily about going hiking with your family, even though that's really important to be active like that. What I mean by active is that you are actively pursuing the things that enrich your life, and health will always be the number one thing in order to achieve that. Rotary is a organization built on humanitarian service. And that is an awesome thing. I think everybody in here at some points thinking has matured to realize that service is the highest ideal that we have in our culture, and we should not lose that. In my mind, though, health is exactly tied to service. My business's name is Siva Fitness because Seva was an ancient word to mean to serve. And I got the idea, and I was greatly motivated and been driven ever since by this quote from Samuel Johnson that says, "To preserve health is a moral duty and the basis of all social virtues, for we can no longer be helpful when we are not well." And the reason why this stuck with me is because there's one basic point that always has gnawed at me, is that a healthy society is made up of healthy individuals, right? If we want to do our share, it starts with us. At some point throughout this, well, let's put it this way. With every person that I meet and every person I'm able to talk to and discuss these things with, I always have this goal by the end of our conversation that they believe that they deserve health, that they need health, that they understand that the people that they love the most in their life want them to be healthy. So we have to ask ourselves at some point, is self-health care the most important thing I can focus on? Is it that first domino that when I push it, it knocks all the other dominoes in my life? And the way I'd like to answer that question is by a poet named Rumi, and give the quote that was really powerful, is yesterday I was clever and I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise and I want to change myself. I really appreciate you guys having me today. I brought some free books of mine. If anybody wants one, all you got to do is shake my hand and introduce yourself, and I'll be back here to answer any questions and talk to you guys as well. It was great meeting you all. I'm supposed to ask if anybody has any questions. Is that correct, sir?
You're open.
I am open. Does anybody have any questions or want to yell at me and be mad at me? Most people don't like talking about health and all the things that I'm doing. Yes, sir.
You know, we see the statistics that say, you know, the higher degree of education you get, the healthier you are.
Yeah.
How can we take our most at-risk populations and work toward their health in this manner?
Yeah. Well, you got to bring the bottom up. Before you can start thinking about thriving, you got to survive. You know, people who are lower income and troubled, populations, they can't see past their nose. We have a saying in martial arts that pressure dictates attention. It's just how we're wired. So if you're trying to figure out how to put food in your belly, you don't care if it's an apple or a ho-ho. As a matter of fact, it's whatever I can afford more of. So we got to bring the bottom out. I always see society as like a rubber band, right? We've got the ends of the spectrum, and then we've got the middle. And there's a tension there that's appropriate. But if it gets pulled too far, then we've got some problems on the whole rubber band side. So working with I remember coming back from Peru, and I went down there on a mission trip, and I was just like, I want to help people, because these were poor people, but they were all obese because the only thing they can afford are highly processed foods. And talking with Laura Roberts from Starfish, she does great work, and she was the one that's like, hey, best of luck to you, but these people have bigger problems, and it really was pressure dictates attention. They're just trying to survive. So these are thriving concepts that we're all lucky enough to be able to consider in our lives. Thanks for the question. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
As far as frequency of exercise, you hear all sorts of things. You hear every day, you hear every other day.
Yes, sir.
In your opinion, what's the maximum schedule?
It's a great question. First, we have to define what exercise would mean to the individual. You are designed to move, right? They're actually building cabinets lower and lower for Americans because we can't get our arms up over our head quite as much. This is a true story. So what this is this is a negative adaptation from sitting disease. Sitting disease is a forward flexion. So even as we get really older, right, that's just a conditioned body structure from sitting. Whatever we do, we get better at. So you're designed to move. You have to move every day. We have programs at Siva Fitness like joint mobility because let's say you have a shoulder, right? Your shoulder blades move up, they move back, they move down, they move forward. And then I have an arm bone that rotates. When you have something behind you, what do? You turn around to go get it, right? You don't do this. Your shoulder's designed to do this, and if you don't do that, then you lose the capacity to do that. So my answer to exercise is we need to move every day. Physical maintenance is incredibly important for longevity. Chip Wynn collects antique cars. Why are those cars still on the road? Somebody took care of them, right? We're kind of the same way. There's things we should do. Now, as far as increasing your heart rate and lifting weights, it's good to pick up heavy things. It's good to have that type of resilience. I would say lift heavy things a couple times a week. You know, there's certain exercises that are more important than others, but having an aerobic heart rate increase in a specific zone according to your age is something you could do every day. Yeah. We work out too much in our culture as well. I know a lot of people who are fit but are unhealthy. We need to make that distinction. We are putting things in our body, supplements. The jury's still out on this supplement stuff and all the biomanipulation we're doing to have bigger muscles and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about health and physical maintenance of the human body. So every day you're designed to move. Yep, it's a great question. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it, guys.
Eric, we appreciate you. And